All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. The class is 152-158, Advanced Website Development for the Fall 2016 semester. And we've been going through our textbook, Sam's Teach Yourself, Bootstrap in 24 Hours. And we're up to Chapter 6, which is on labels, badges, panels, wells, and the Jumbotron. You notice two things. First, we only have three objectives here. How to add extra information to elements with labels and badges, how to box up content in wells and panels, and how to feature special content in a Jumbotron. That's the first thing. The second thing is you may end up, out of all the chapters we've gone over so far, liking this one the most because it's the most visual. All right. As mentioned, there's a lot of ways that you can adjust how a site looks. In this chapter, we'll talk about some of them. There are specific tools, the labels, badges, panels, wells, and Jumbotron for designing different sections of a web page. All right. Labels and badges, as mentioned right here, are a way to add extra information into an element. You can put a label on virtually anything, and badges typically are used as indicators. So in other words, they typically will have a number or some kind of other value that has some kind of a meaning. All right. So labels are typically an inline element, so you can see an example right here. So there's the heading and there's the label that goes with it. Now, by default, if you click on a label, nothing magical is going to happen. All right. So if you want to add a label, as it says, you can add the label class to a span element. Then you have to define what type of label you want, and you can see the map up here. Default, which is the gray color, label, background with white print, primary, which is blue with white print, success, which is green with white print, info, which is light blue with white print, warning, which is yellow, kind of an orange with white print, and red for danger, red background with white print. So these are the variations. And it says there, if you're a designer at heart, your first thought might be, I don't like those colors. They don't fit into my design. You can change them using your own custom style sheet. I guess sometimes the question you have to ask is, yes, I can do that, but should I do that? And to be honest with you, there maybe is no magical answer to the question I just asked you. And what I mean by that is, well, you might turn around and say, I don't like these colors. Yet they do have a very, red, danger, gray, default. This yellow, oranges, warning, green, success. They do make sense. All right. So, as it says, you want to make sure you place your style sheet, if you do have your own, last in the head of the document, after the Bootstrap style. So after the Bootstrap min CSS. Always be as specific as possible with your style rules. The more specific you are, the more likely it'll be applied correctly. Consider creating your own style classes. If you must modify Bootstrap CSS, do it with less rather than indirectly in the CSS. We'll cover that much later on. So it says you can modify all the labels on your site as well as specific variations. So notice here they've got, this will be setting up the defaults. All right, and then we're going through here and we're adding some styling, more styling, then we've got our HTML, and I thought they showed what it looked like, and maybe I'm wrong here. So let's put it in. That's fine. So let's grab this and take this from the top. All right, so I'm going to copy that. Come over here, paste it in. We'll call this label.html. All right. And when we want to do this, we're going to have to put in our own. So here, I guess they put in the stuff right in line here. So when we launch, you see the different effect. Now the colors are the same, but the effect is different. You can have, draw your own conclusions as to whether or not that's more or less successful. All right. Badges again, as we move on, and we're on page 77. As mentioned here, badges are similar to labels, but they show typically some kind of a count. So rather than saying class of label, you want a class of badge. All right? You can use them for all sorts of different things. Okay, and I think you all, you're all smart enough to know this, but for example, if I went, I'm in Google. So if I Googled and I said Bootstrap badge example, I'm going to get a lot of them. All right, here's W3 schools. So there's an example with a badge. Okay, and if we click over here, what do we have? Badge 5, news, comments, etc. So I could change this to whatever I wanted to. Hello, which will have be a 1. Goodbye, which will be a 2. And see ya, which will be a 3. And I mean, just to show you, and boom. Oh, come on, give me the results. See result. There you go. Hello, goodbye, and see ya. All right. If you don't like what I just showed you, and you might not, notice the second thing that's in here are under the components of Bootstrap. So if you come in under components, and if I look in here and I look for badges, just like I could look for labels, so there's label examples, and there's the badges examples. All right. In fact, much of the stuff that's discussed in this chapter, like Jumbotrons and wells and all the other stuff, there's wells. All right. And panels, I believe, are in here also. There they are. All right. So again, we're kind of extrapolating or pulling information, for lack of better words. We're pulling a lot of the information from the getbootstrap.com documentation page. Kind of an important point here. They mention if you don't have a value inside of your badge, okay, make sure that you say class equal badge, but don't put a value in it, because then Bootstrap will automatically collapse or not show the badge, which typically will look a lot more professional than putting in there with no value in it whatsoever. All right, wells and panels. We're on the bottom of page 77 and going on to pages 78, 79, 80, and 81. It says sometimes you want to add boxes around your content for different effects. We're going to see different ways of doing this. Wells are a fairly simple effect, where panels are more complex. Wells are a simple style you give to give an inset effect. So you can see the standard versus putting it in a well. All right. There's 2 optional classes you can use with wells, large and small, to make them bigger or smaller. So if you notice, there's a large well. You can see the thickness has changed. There's a small well, so it's thinner, etc. And again, there are examples in here. At first glance, as they mention here, as we move on to the middle of page 79, panels look at least somewhat similar to wells, but notice they add more features. You can include headers with them, footers, contextual alternatives. So it's much easier with a panel to make things look the way you want them to look. All right, I look at this, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, wow, would a panel be something I could use for an FAQ page? Okay, by putting some jQuery in there. Do I want to do it that way? But notice that when you do this, you can use those same colors that we looked at before. You see, they're not the same colors. They really and truly pretty much are. But notice in here, that is a little different, but that's the same blue. That green for the wordage is pretty much the same green. That blue for the wordage is pretty much the same blue as the background. The wordage is pretty much the same as the warning background, and the same with danger. Typically, as mentioned, you place a panel header above the panel body, and you can set it up to do virtually just about anything you want it to do. So you can play with panels and headings, and you can play with panels and footers. Okay. Finally, the Jumbotron is the last thing that's discussed in the chapter, beginning on page 81 and going through page 83. And as it says, it's a large layout block that you can use to add attention to featured content. This is the way it typically looks. All right. And you can make a full width Jumbotron, or you can make a narrow Jumbotron. You may or may not have remembered this, but when we looked in here way a long time ago, under the getting started, we found in here, was it under the getting started? I don't remember. Somewhere in here we had the examples. Let's see. There's the examples. And under the examples, we had the Jumbotron and we had the narrow Jumbotron. Okay? So you can always go and look in there to grab that code if you're interested in that. So when you have the narrow Jumbotron, as it says, you get the rounded corners. Okay? And does it look more professional? That's a matter of opinion, and it's a matter of what your usage is and what appeals more to you. Creating a Jumbotron is easy, as it says. You just add the Jumbotron to the container element. Typically, if you're going to create an entire site, the Jumbotron will be on the first page. Okay. All right. So this has been a visual chapter where we discuss labels and badges and a few other things. What they do is, and at the end of each chapter, is they show you all of the CSS classes that we've used in the chapter, so you can take a look at those as you desire. All right. So the Q&A, how do I make badges update when the number changes? All right. It says, and to my knowledge, if you need this, it says you search for a script, but it'll probably be JavaScript, or if you're doing it on the server side, it'll be whatever server-side scripting language you're using, PHP, ASP.NET, or whatever. If I don't like the default color for wells, can I change it? Yes, and they show an example of changing it there. Does using a Jumbotron class change the styles of the contained content? As it says, typically, for the most part, no. You'll see that as we go on. All right, exactly what the author means from there. For the quiz, how do you add a label to your content? B, add the dot label and the dot label with a minus variation classes to any element. Number 2, what's the difference between a label and a badge? It's C, labels are primarily textual, while badges are more iconographic, all right, numeric, whatever. Number 3, you should never create your own style classes when modifying Bootstrap. Of course, that would be false. Number 4, which of the following is not a label or panel variation? The answer is main. Number 5, why should you leave badges empty rather than using 0 or null, as we talked about earlier, so that they disappear when they're empty? Number 6, true or false, wells and block quotes are displayed in the same way in Bootstrap. Number 6, and the answer is false. Number 7, which of the following is a valid well class? The answer is A, .well/lg. Number 8, true or false, panel variations don't change the panel if there is no heading. It's true. Number 9, this panel has a title that's shown there. Well, if you notice, what's not shown there is no dot panel/title. So the answer would be false. Finally, number 10, Jumbotrons work only within a dot container class. Also false. That ends up Chapter 6, so we're a quarter of the way through. We're doing well. And next we'll go into Chapter 7, and I plan on doing that tomorrow, getting as much of Chapter 7 through 12 or 7 through 13 as I can tomorrow. And I'll talk to you then.